So our surveys kind of bear that out too, that none of the drivers thought that the riders should offer a cash payment. They were just doing this out of the goodness of their heart, or because it's fun, or because they're rescuers, or because, one of these other reasons. But 50% of them liked the idea of a chance to win a prize. We gave out driver surveys and we found that that was a result. So, most people, and especially if someone was doing this over and over and over again, getting rides with the same person, commuting to work, then that was important for them. I've also gotten a great sense of personal empowerment from this program. Now I feel that if I have my ride board, and I've got my dry erase marker, and I've got a safe roadside, and I've got a little bit of time on my hands and my cell phone for backup, I can really go anywhere. It doesn't matter if my car breaks down, it doesn't matter if, my husband's gonna have to take the car somewhere and I can't, before I would just say, I can't get there, I can't go, or I'd have to find a neighbor to drive me. But now, I can go places, I can get there. And that's very empowering and very confidence building. And I think that would be it's a great opportunity for anybody. So I went to the Governor's Summit on the future of transportation in Kansas. And okay, so Secretary King, the Secretary of Transportation, he got up and he said, transportation is all about choices. We can move freight by rail, we can move freight by airplane, we can move freight by highway. So then during the question and answer session, I put up my hand and I said, Secretary King, you talk about transportation being about choices, but we're a very car-dependent state. What's going to happen if we have spikes in the price of gas or shortages? What is there a plan in place in case that happens? And his answer was basically, no, there's no plan. He's like the rural gentleman that picked me up, and when I addressed this issue, he said, well, y'all can just get better jobs. The transportation professionals, especially in small towns that I've talked to, the people who are actually on the ground running MPOs, running small rideshare programs in their towns, they can see the obvious benefits of this. It's cheap. You don't have to buy buses or trains or lay track or anything. It's quick to implement, and because it's using infrastructure we already have, cars that are already on the road, and it can be done anywhere. So it's really quick to get up and running. It takes cars off the road, so it's good for the environment. If everybody doubles up, we'll have half as many cars driving around, half as much pollution, smaller carbon footprint, all those good things. It also builds resiliency for emergencies. After the Hurricane Sandy in New York, a lot of people started using that Karma car sharing app because the bridges were out, the roads were disrupted, people's cars were wet, and their usage spiked to thousands and thousands and thousands of people signing up to use that. So similarly, this is something that in an emergency, shortages or increases in price of gas, that would help us out. And then of course it does build neighborliness and trust. And anytime we can bring trust into the community, that's a win. Which brings me to a trend that's going on right now in economics, which is the sharing economy. Has anybody ever heard of collaborative consumption, sharing economy? Okay, some of you have. How many people have sold or bought something on eBay? Yeah, okay, or Craigslist? Yeah, then you're part of the sharing economy. It's a way of using your peers, your networks, your neighbors, your friends, people in your community to get access to the things that you need. So car sharing, couch surfing, Airbnb, ways to do these peer-to-peer sharing networks rather than relying on a company to provide all your needs for you. This is booming, it's exploding into the world right now. These companies are really just the up and coming new thing, and they're really taking over the world, and it's great. So this kind of fits in with that new sharing economy. People are starting to codify ways and learn how to trust each other more to do these online, especially peer-to-peer networks. So I'll let you know what we have for Lawrence OnBoard so far. We've got our research with 120 rides. We've got nonprofit status in Kansas. We have a sponsorship through the Sustainability Action Network, local sustainability program. We have a website, lawrenceonboard.org, where I'm keeping a blog on the program and our experiences. We have a Facebook page, and we have a newsletter, which, where is that? Here it is. If any of you would like to follow our progress and learn more about Lawrence OnBoard, I'd encourage you to come sign up to the newsletter. I'll leave it right here. We're also mapping the locations where we get rides on the crowd map. We've got about 40 plus maps so far, and we plan to put new ones on as we find them. So what's the next step for Lawrence OnBoard? Well, we're going to finish our preliminary research. We've got, like I said, 120 rides. We want to try to get 150 by the end of the month. And that is because, and this is the exciting part, I just wrote and submitted a paper. Here it is, Community Rideshare for a Small City, Preliminary Results for the Lawrence OnBoard Prototype Program. Wrote this with Ann Dunning from the Transportation Planning Department up here at KU. And it just got accepted to the Transportation Research Board Conference. So we're going to put the new data in there, tidy it up, and present it to the stodgy transportation professionals and rock their world. We need to write a handbook. We need to codify all this knowledge that we've gained and put it into a handbook so people can know how to do this smart and safe. And we need to get some training protocols. We also need to work on liability issues, insurance issues. We need to network with the Lawrence Police Department, make sure they're not going to arrest our people because they think they're sketchy hitchhikers. We're exploring grants, strategic partnerships, and other sources of funding. That's tricky, but we got some ideas. One of which is Rocket Hub crowdfunding campaign. If you've heard of Kickstarter or Indiegogo or one of these crowdsourced fundraising campaigns, that's what we're going to try to do in the springtime, is to do a crowdfunded so we can get the community to participate in the program. It'll give us some advertising and some publicity as well as some funding. And if it all comes together, we hope to launch a pilot program in the spring of 2014 to start signing up drivers first and then riders second and see how it goes. So I'll leave you with this thought. Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. Well, I say, be the bus you want to see in your town. I'd like to thank, I have a couple of acknowledgments here, all the wonderful people who've helped me out with this program. Ann Dunning, people at St. John's that gave me office space, all the transportation professionals that I talked to, all my great citizen researchers that helped out with the project. I couldn't have done it without you. And I will remind you to sign up for emails. And thank you all for listening, and I'll see you on the road. Some questions?
Hi, that was a very informative speech talk, and you answered most of the questions I would have had, save one. And this may be in the future, but you said that in order for the driver to get a, what did you call it, a sticker for his windshield, she has to have what I understood to be a security check, which would probably include things like criminal record, insurance, that sort of thing. Do you do that now, or would you do it later? And if so, that's a rather specialized task. Would you subcontract that, or would it just be done by volunteers on the internet? Or a question there from the driver.
That question was about vetting and background checks for the drivers. Yeah, that is an important consideration, and we are going to consult with some of the other rideshare companies and projects that are out there. You know, the NPO over in Kansas City, the Mid-America Regional Council, they have a ride-sharing program. They vet their people. Sometimes it's done just simply through, you know, filling out a form and showing your links on Facebook, having a valid email address. There's some shortcuts. Anybody who works for the university or for the city, they've already had, or for, you know, yeah, a teacher for the city, they've already had a background check. So they're an automatic in. We also need to decide how robust those background checks for the drivers are going to be. Also because we're having a lot of random strangers, especially at the beginning. You know, we do want to make it too off-putting for people, but I want to make sure that they're not, you know, that they have a valid driver's license, that they have insurance, and they're not, you know, on a danger list at the minimum. For riders, I think it might be a little bit more robust of a background check because we have more control over that. And it's also really important to say that any, you know, Lawrence OnBoard rider they're good to go. They're not going to cause any trouble. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Have you thought about partnering with organizations like Independence Inc.,
Yeah.
Carlton Wood, and other groups that have like people with challenges who are unable to drive, but their people often walk around
Okay.
town.
Yeah, the question is partnering with Independence Inc. or other organizations with for helping people who can't drive. Yeah, that's a big picture on this. We need to make sure that the system is robust and that it's working and it's safe for everybody. And we need to figure out some ways to bring in some more mobility challenged options for people. But it's certainly in the picture, and we've had a lot of interest from Independence Inc., from senior citizens groups. Yeah, that's definitely part of the picture. We want to bring them in. Yeah, question.
I may be the only person left on the planet that doesn't have a cell phone, or maybe 2 or 3 others. How do you deal with that? And also, isn't there a city ordinance against hitchhiking?
Yeah, 2 really good questions. Okay, how do we work this if you don't have a cell phone? Best practices, yeah, get a cell phone because it really helps. It's one of the safety backups. Especially for female riders, I would say that's really pretty important. Also because every once in a while you just kind of get a little bit stuck, and it's nice to have an option to call for backup. But on the other hand, I've had several volunteers who don't have cell phones, and they seem to work it out pretty well. For the driver incentives, we're working on some kind of a workaround for that. Maybe like a lottery ticket that you hand out, business cards you hand out, some way to identify yourself and to encourage people to participate in the program and to give them the incentives. And the second question was, is there a city ordinance against hitchhiking? I just had that issue come up yesterday because my husband, bless his heart, he's been putting off going on test rides for all this time, but then yesterday he said, by golly, I want to hitch my way home. So I gave him a ride board and a name tag, and I parked him at one of my favorite spots for getting home, which is on New Hampshire Street, kind of close to the library. And he was there about 10 minutes before a police officer pulled up. Now, my husband, he's the sweetest guy in the world, but he's got a beard, and he's, gray hair, and he's kind of tall, and I wouldn't say he's menacing, but he's not, he's not like me, So yeah, police officer pulled up and said, I don't think you should be doing that. And Tim explained, what all our program was all about and what we were trying to do, and that we've been working with the city, and we've been talking with the Sustainability Advisory Board, and everybody's in the loop. And well, he wouldn't have anything of it. And I have very carefully combed through the city code for anything that specifically prohibits hitchhiking, and I couldn't find anything. This officer said, well, I think it's against the state law. So I looked again at the state law, and the only thing that I can find, it says, persons shall not stand in a roadway for the purpose of soliciting a ride. And I take that to mean you can't block traffic, because that's, that's the main reason why you shouldn't be standing in a roadway, is because it's dangerous and it's dumb and it blocks traffic. So the police officer drove off in the morning, and 5 minutes later Tim had a ride and he came on home. But I did contact the assistant city attorney to make sure that we're all on the same page with the ordinances and the legal issues. And she's going to get back to me today about that, and also liaise with the police department to get them in the loop about what we're doing. Yeah, that's a big part of the picture. Thanks for that question. Any more? Yeah, Red?
In any of your research or your test hitchhikers, have they been carrying loads of groceries or, you know, practical things that you do when you need to go someplace?
Okay, yeah, good question. Have we carried things? I carried a cooler one time full of eggs for the farmer's market. I've carried numerous tote bags and backpacks. But yeah, it would be, I want to try to hitchhike with a load of laundry sometimes. I was joking that we have these scythes that we use for trimming our grass up in the pasture, and I thought, I should try hitching with the scythes sometime. That'd be fun. But yeah, you kind of, if I have a lot of shopping to do, a lot of groceries, a lot of loads to tote, then usually I'll figure out a way to take my car into town. So I usually do this myself about 2 days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, or you know, a trip in or a trip home, as it works with coordinating with my husband. But the nice thing is that before I started doing this, we would have 2 cars in town all the time. And now we almost never have 2 cars into town. So we've almost halved our carbon footprint just by more efficient use and using this to fill in the gaps.
What about appointments? Appointments like with the doctor's office or where you have to be there at a special time?
Okay.
Yeah, for appointments and times when you have to be there at a particular time, I would advise people to, you know, not do this the first time if you've got to be somewhere right away. You know, give yourself a pretty good long bit of time the first few times until you get a good idea of how long it's going to take in your particular location. Now, when I go into town from out in rural Jefferson County, I stand on the, you know, Wellman Road and 27th Street, and on the average, it takes me about, I'd say about 8 minutes up there, depending on the traffic flow. Now, on the 4th of July, like a dummy, I decided I was going to hitch into town and get some work done. So I went out there about 10 o'clock in the morning on the 4th of July. Nobody's driving on the 4th of July in rural Jefferson County. I stood there for 25 minutes until I had some old guy who looked like he'd been living a pretty hard life, and his car was too, and he was playing AC/DC full volume, but gave me a ride, you know, put a cigarette out too, which I thought was very gentlemanly, and yeah, and gave me a ride into town, and we talked about all the heavy metal cover bands in the Kansas City area in the town. But yeah, you kind of have to get a feel for where the traffic is, when they're flowing, and it's one of these things that you get better with practice.
And this whole dynamic, who's more important to, in a sense, certify, the rider or the driver? Because I grew up hitchhiking. I grew up in an era when that's the only way I could get around. In 1956, I pledged a fraternity, and one of the things that they did was they took all the pledges out, 80, 100 miles away from St. Paul, and told them to get back the best way they could, carrying various objects. I was given an axe. I got a ride in about 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That took me all the way to St. Paul. He thought it was a great thing, took me to St. Paul. So, where's the source of worry? Is the source of worry getting the riders certified as non-axe murderers, or the drivers certified as being non?
Yeah.
Which one?
Okay, I would say for the strength of the program, it's probably more important to get the riders all background checked and certified, because having this and having a Lawrence OnBoard ID is a guarantee that these people are safe. They're safe to pick up, they're going to be smart about it, they'll be polite, they'll text your member number if you've got one. You know, this is saying that these people are okay. So we don't want to have anybody who sneaks in to the system and then knocks somebody on the head while they're driving down the road. You know, that would be a very bad thing.
So down the line, will there be a clearinghouse where anybody who thinks they might be interested in hitchhiking can go and get that?
Yeah. Eventually there'll be an application process where you can, if you're interested, you can sign up, and we still have yet to look at what that process is going to be like and how stringent it's going to be. But there's some models that we're looking at that are already out there. Now, the reason that it would be to our benefit to have drivers, especially, to be registered members, is because, well, for one thing, they'll be a pool of really willing people who understand the system. It's also much more comfortable for the riders to get in the car with somebody who knows the story, you know, who knows how it works. They can also have a seat cleared off. They can make sure that the seat belt's working, that the passenger door will open, you know, and follow the rules of etiquette. All those things are really beneficial when you have drivers signed up as participants. Yeah, other question?
So the current status of this program is you have test riders with green placards, and anybody can pick up those riders. Any one of us can pick up one of those riders.
That's correct,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, and then the goal is, and you know who these riders are because they've got the green placards and you've got information. And the goal is to get information on drivers so that only drivers that sign on with you can pick up these green placard riders?
Okay, yeah, the question is, you know, is the rule going to be that only registered drivers can pick up our people? Well, actually, you know, especially in the beginning, it's going to be mostly random strangers that pick us up. Eventually, we're hoping that we'll get, you know, enough of a critical mass so that, you know, there's several in your area, and if somebody comes along and they're not a registered driver, you can say, oh, I prefer to ride with registered driver, and oh, I see one coming along right now. So it just increases the comfort level, it increases the working of the system, yeah, to be much more efficient and better. But yeah, there will definitely still be some, and there are some safety protocols too. So if, you know, you as a woman want to get in the car with somebody and you're just not quite sure, but it's starting to rain and you really want to get a ride somewhere, we still have that option of texting in license plate numbers or calling the Lawrence OnBoard office so that there's a record of the ride and you feel a little safer.
It might be a good idea to have flyers for riders so that if an unregistered rider or driver stops, they could say, here, you might want to be part of the program.
Absolutely, that is a big part of it. Yeah, because the drivers, when they stop, in fact, all the people who stop and pick me up, pretty much, they say, yeah, I want to sign up. You know, let me know when you're ready to sign people up, because they're the ones that are picking you up. They're the ones that live in your neighborhood, and you know, if you get enough of them, then you'll have a ready pool of people good to go. Questions? Yeah.
I have built a life on trying to help people, but I'm beginning to wonder if I can be a driver. I think you said I'd need to text somebody.
As a driver?
Yes.
No, just the riders.
What would I need to provide? Do I have to provide umpteen pieces of information to the rider?
No, you just, all you'll have is a window cling with your member number on it. And all you do is just pull up and say, hey, where are you going? Hop in. Yeah, it's pretty, we're trying to make it as simple as possible.